Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Renegade Immortal episode number 110 based on novel. So let's start. Only after reaching the level above Ascendant or if a rank 5 cultivation country ascends to rank 6 can one soul piece be safely retrieved. Yunkyuji wasn't able to retrieve his soul piece. In fact, ever since the country of Suzaku arrived, no one has managed to retrieve their soul piece. This had a lot to do with Sichunan's seal. Although the seal on the cultivation planet Crystal prevented future Suzakus from controlling the planet, it also stopped anyone from being able to retrieve their soul piece when they reached the Ascendant stage. In some more powerful cultivation planets, like the ones controlled by rank 7 or 8 cultivation countries, there were sects that were powerful enough to match a rank 6 cultivation planet. These sects have found ways to avoid the cultivation planet Crystal. If that wasn't the case, there wouldn't be any strife within the Cultivation Alliance. At this moment, far away in space on a large planet, many rays of sword lights were flying across the sky. These people were not fighting but rushing to some place. This planet was far too large. It was tens of times the size of planet Suzaku, and with a planet this big, it would naturally have more mortals. 5 smaller planets orbited this large planet. There were also countless cultivators living on each one of them. There were even smaller planets farther out with powerful formations protecting them. The largest planet, the one at the center, was planet Chen-Yun. The 5 smaller planets were under the control of planet Chen-Yun, which was a rank 7 planet. As for the even smaller planets, they were personal planets of very powerful cultivators. Unless people were personally invited, no one could enter them. Planet Suzaku was simply too small compared to this. There were many sects on planet Chen-Yun, but of course the most prominent was the Heavenly Fate sect. The Heavenly Fate sect says that everything in life depends on fate. Everything has already been set, so you can't force it and you can't escape it. This decree of the sect gave them a transcendental feel. The person who set this decree was a person that a majority of the population on planet Chen-Yun respected. He was the All-Seer. At this moment, the All-Seer opened his eyes from his closed-door cultivation. He had a gentle expression on his face, and although he had white hair, he didn't look old, giving him a transcendental feel. His bright eyes showed off more energy than many youths' eyes. There wasn't a hint of death on him. He was filled with endless vitality. He was currently at the Heavenly Fate sect's Celestial Fate Pagoda. At this moment, both of his eyes revealed a mysterious light and he muttered to himself, "When I was visiting an old friend, I passed by a semi-wasted cultivation planet and met a child. This child was able to comprehend the life and death domain of the reincarnation cycle and was trying to reach the soul formation stage. Not many people can do this, so when I saw that his cultivation was lacking, I gave him a hint and said that I would accept him as my honorary disciple for 100 years. Today I suddenly had a feeling. I believe that this child will arrive soon. I don't know what cultivation level he is currently at, but if he manages to get here, if his cultivation level isn't at least at the late stage of soul formation, I'll be disappointed." The All-Seer pondered a bit before slightly shaking his head and closing his eyes again. Inside the Suzaku tomb, Wang Lin had slowed down and kept his divine sense in a smaller range than before. There were simply too many of those life forms around here, and some of them would be hard for Wang Lin to deal with unless he used the 1 billion soul flag. He moved very carefully. Whenever he detected danger, he would immediately change directions and go around it. This caused his journey to slow down a lot. On this day, what appeared before Wang Lin were 2 heaven-piercing mountains. Between the 2 mountains was a small path with no end in sight that led into the depths of the 2 mountains. The 2 mountains were surrounded by a luscious jungle. While Wang Lin stood at the foot of the 2 mountains, he pondered a bit and his eyes sparkled. He had already been in the inner part of the tomb for a few days now. According to his calculations, the center of this place should be through the path. However, along the way, Wang Lin could clearly feel that the closer he went to the center, the more of those life forms there were. Some of the more powerful ones were not things Wang Lin could deal with. After pondering for a moment, Wang Lin walked toward the small path between the 2 mountains. He was very cautious with each step and constantly watched his surroundings. These life forms could take many forms, so if one was careless for even a moment, they would be ambushed. Along the way, Wang Lin looked at the surface of the two mountains on either side of this narrow path. There were patches of wet spots on the smooth, mountain surfaces, and sometimes drops of water would fall from the sides of the mountains. After walking several dozen meters, Wang Lin's expression changed and he realized that something was off. He carefully looked at the walls of the two mountains and his eyes lit up. If this place is wet year-round, then there should be moss growing. After all, the rest of this place is similar to the planet outside. However, this place looks like it just became wet recently. Wang Lin's right hand pointed to the face of one of the mountains and his finger immediately dug into it, creating a 1-inch deep hole. The outer half-inch of the hole was wet, but the latter half-inch was dry. Without any hesitation, Wang Lin quickly backed up. In the blink of an eye, he was already out of the small path, and right as he backed out, the water on the walls of the mountain began to move. The water came out from the walls and droplets of crystal clear water started floating above the small path. These were countless water drops, at least tens of thousands of them, and every single one of them represented a soul piece. These water droplets condensed into a human figure. The water moved in a mysterious fashion and finally took the shape of a woman. This woman looked normal, but she gave off a strange aura. After she appeared, she stared coldly at Wang Lin and slowly said, "You can't go inside." Wang Lin slowly backed up. The one type of life form he least wanted to mess was one made of water. This type was the most difficult life form to deal with. Even though the one before him was only as strong as a soul formation cultivator, it would still be hard for him to deal with. Water was a substance that could gather and scatter. Even though he could seal it, it was very difficult to get it all. A few days ago, Wang Lin encountered a water-based life form and he had to give up and move around it in the end. This was why once he noticed that there was a chance that a water-based life form was here, he backed up without any hesitation. Just as he backed up, he spread out his divine sense to check what was further down the path. Before, his divine sense wasn't spread out much to avoid unnecessary trouble, but now that the water life form had showed itself, he spread it out without any hesitation and was shocked. Deep into the mountain path, he saw someone. This was someone he knew. This person was currently fighting against a water life form and had the upper hand. However, when he saw the water life form this person was fighting against, he felt a sense of familiarity with it. This feeling wasn't strong, but it was there. Wang Lin's heart trembled as he backed up. After the woman made of water droplets saw Wang Lin back up, she quickly moved deeper into the mountain. Wang Lin stood outside the mountain and pondered. Something is not right. Why does that water life form give me this feeling? I don't have a water spirit root, so my soul piece can't be inside a water life form. This is strange. Wang Lin slightly frowned. He hung around for a bit and just as he was about to leave, his expression suddenly changed and he turned around. He suddenly felt pain in his heart. It was as if there was a soul piece inside there, weakly calling out to him for help. Wan. Wang Lin was startled and he understood. Wan was inside the heaven-defying bead, and the heaven-defying bead existed within his soul. Naturally, this gave him the ability to detect Wan's soul piece. Wang Lin's eyes became cold. This time he didn't hesitate to fly into the depths of the two mountains. Just as he entered the path, the woman who blocked him earlier took form again to block him. She raised her right hand and waved it. Soon, a large amount of water droplets filled the small path. Wang Lin's eyes became cold. Without a word, he took out the celestial sword while not slowing down at all and threw it forward with a shout. After that, he pointed his left hand between his eyebrows. Wang Lin's body trembled for a moment as his origin soul came out of his body. His origin soul was over 100 feet tall. It caught up to the celestial sword in an instant and continued to charge forth. In almost the blink of an eye, Wang Lin's origin soul charged through the woman's body and the celestial sword pierced through her body. The woman let out a miserable groan as the soul pieces that formed her body collapsed and scattered, but Wang Lin's origin soul had already entered her body. His origin soul divided from 1 to 2, then from 2 to 4, and from 4 to 8 until his origin soul had split into countless smaller pieces that entered every single soul piece. At the same time, a shout came from Wang Lin's origin soul. Seal. In an instant, countless restrictions appeared from Wang Lin's origin soul and sealed each one of the soul pieces. Then he reformed his origin soul and flew toward his body, which was still flying in this direction due to momentum. Wang Lin's eyes lit up as his origin soul returned to his body. His hand reached out and the celestial sword flew back into his grasp. Holding the celestial sword, Wang Lin charged into the depths of the mountain. Shortly after Wang Lin left, the droplets that he sealed all popped. The water droplets turned to gas and gathered together to reform that woman. A water life form can only be sealed for a moment. It is almost impossible to completely seal them. This woman's eyes were fierce as she looked into the depths of the mountain. Her body turned into water once more as she charged after Wang Lin. Wang Lin moved very quickly, so he arrived deep within the mountain in a few short moments. There was a hunchbacked old man with half of his clothes torn. There were many glowing tattoos on his body. Their tattoos floating in the air before him, forming a seal with a mass of water in the middle. This water seemed to be boiling. There was an 8-leaf plant on the old man's forehead, and he was emitting a powerful tattoo energy. The hunchbacked old man said, "I can't kill you, but I can refine all these soul pieces that allow you to take form. It will take you a while to recover, so you won't be able to chase after me anymore." This old man was the one that chased Wang Lin into the spatial rift back in the immortal graveyard. In the end, he relied on his connection to the ancestral spirit to finally get rescued by his clan. His hatred for Wang Lin had reached its limit and caused him to go on a killing spree in this war. Among all the 8-leaf shamans, he's the one who killed the most cultivators. Wang Lin's appearance shocked the old man. He had to keep all his attention on the water life form or else he would die, so he didn't notice Wang Lin approaching. Also, Wang Lin's cultivation level was much higher than before. This was why the old man didn't detect Wang Lin. "It's you." The old man's eyes immediately became cold when he saw Wang Lin and he let out a laugh. He pointed at a tattoo before him and it immediately charged toward Wang Lin. Wang Lin coldly snorted. He didn't pause at all after he arrived here. Almost at the same moment the old man noticed him, he teleported next to the tattoos that were trapping the water life form and swung down the celestial sword. With a loud bang, countless cracks appeared on the tattoos that were sealing the water and they shattered one by one. The hunchbacked old man let out a roar as he charged toward Wang Lin. His hand extended toward Wang Lin and at the center of his palm was a very ancient tattoo. Wang Lin's eyes lit up. Without a word, he reached out and the 1 billion soul flag appeared. Without even attacking, the 1 billion soul flag could shock any enemy. The hunchbacked old man couldn't help but pause for a moment. His heart trembled. He felt like he knew this flag and couldn't help but feel terror. Wang Lin shook the 1 billion soul flag, causing a series of ghostly wails to escape as the soul fragments charged out. The loudest wail came from a purple Chileen that let out a roar that pierced even the high heavens. Right after it appeared, it opened its vicious mouth and tried to devour the old man. Behind the Chileen were more than 10 soul transformation primary souls. The entire gorge was surrounded by the soul fragments and they all charged toward the old man. The hunchbacked old man secretly cursed and backed up without any hesitation. If there were only a few soul transformation soul fragments, he wouldn't have to worry so much. After all, a soul fragment couldn't compare to a real cultivator. Even if there were 3 or 4 of them, he would at least be able to escape or fight to a standstill. But there were simply too many of them for someone of his current cultivation level to handle. That purple Chileen was especially terrifying, just looking at it made his heart tremble. Adding on to that, there were countless weaker soul fragments. After taking all that into account, there's no way he would fight, so he quickly escaped. He would never have guessed that the little brat he could have easily killed 100 years ago had already reached the soul transformation stage and possessed the 1 billion soul flag that the Forsaken Immortal clan feared. The hunchbacked old man could even feel that a large number of the soul fragments had the aura of his Forsaken Immortal clan. Those must have been his clan members who were captured and refined in the war back then. At the moment the old man tried to escape, the woman who was chasing Wang Lin arrived. When she saw the scene inside the gorge, her eyes lit up. She turned into water and silently moved toward the old man. Wang Lin didn't have time to bother with the old man. He continued to swing the celestial sword down on the tattoo prison. A series of rumbling sounds could be heard as more and more tattoos shattered. The water life form trapped inside turned from a mass of water into a woman. When Wang Lin saw her, his heart trembled. This woman looked similar to Li Muwen. With one last swing of the celestial sword, Wang Lin shattered the prison completely. The woman inside let out a joyous laugh and escaped the prison. Wang Lin already knew this would happen, so there was no way he would let her escape. The only issue was that this woman was much stronger than the one that tried to stop him before. She was almost as powerful as a mid-stage soul transformation cultivator. Adding on her immortal body, she was very difficult to deal with. Even the old man couldn't kill her, he could only trap her temporarily. As soon as the woman that looked similar to Li Muwen tried to escape, Wang Lin took a deep breath and with one thought, all of the soul fragments connected to form a net. Aside from the few primary souls that were chasing the old man, the rest were all gathered here. A powerful aura came from all sides, then the woman calmly looked around before her gaze landed on Wang Lin. She let out a laugh and said, "You saved me, yet now you are trapping me. What do you want?" Wang Lin coldly asked, "Do you want to die or live?" The woman smiled and laughed. "No one can kill me here. Even if you were to trap me, I only need to spend a bit of time to escape." Wang Lin's eyes became cold and he said, "Soul flag, fuse." With that, all of the soul fragments rapidly fused with the primary souls. In almost the blink of an eye, all of the soul fragments disappeared, leaving behind only 6 primary souls with power beyond a late-stage soul transformation cultivators but not as powerful as an ascendant cultivator. These 6 primary souls surrounded the woman and coldly stared at her. Wang Lin said, "Destroy." With one word, the 6 primary souls all moved and attacked with various spells and techniques. The woman laughed as her body shattered and the pieces flew in all directions. Wang Lin was waiting for this because only when her body was split into water droplets would he be able to find Li Muwen's soul piece. However, just as Wang Lin and the 6 primary souls moved, the entire gorge shook. This tremble came from the ground. Not only here, but the entire Suzaku tomb was shaking right now. As the shaking continued, ripping sounds could be heard from the sky. It was as if there were giant hands tearing the sky open. Countless spatial rifts appeared in the sky. The cold wind coming out of them could freeze a person. These spatial rifts weren't like the ones outside. With those, you could safely enter them if you reach a certain cultivation level. This place was different though. The spatial rifts here weren't real spatial rifts, they merely looked like them. In the Suzaku tomb, there were dimensional cracks which were produced by the special power of the cultivation planet crystal. Even if a soul transformation cultivators were to enter, their soul would immediately die without any exception. As the cultivation planet heart continued to shatter, the cultivation planet crystal's collapse finally started. The earth of the Suzaku tomb began to crack and many cultivators who entered died under this natural disaster. Even many of the life forms who normally couldn't die were killed. The entire Suzaku tomb was surrounded by a power death aura. The gorge Wang Lin was in was no different. The ground shattered and a large number of dimensional cracks appeared to devour everything. Wang Lin quickly used the soul flag to call back all the soul fragments. Right now, Wang Lin had no time to worry about the old man. His gaze was locked onto the woman that looked similar to Li Muwen. Right now the woman was in a state of shock, so she revealed a horrified expression that she had never shown before. Her body was slowly collapsing and then, with a bang, her body turned into countless water droplets. The countless water droplets were also collapsing. This was a real death for her. Wang Lin moved like lightning as he dodged many dimensional cracks and arrived before the mass of water droplets. His right hand reached out and grabbed a crystal-clear water droplet. At the moment he touched the droplet, he felt like he had touched Li Muwen. As soon as he grabbed the water droplet, he immediately backed up, but a dimensional rift silently appeared before him. With a tearing sound, a large piece of Wang Lin's clothes disappeared. Cold sweat covered Wang Lin's forehead as he carefully evaded the rifts and finally left the gorge. This tremble lasted only 10 breaths of time, but after these 10 breaths, the entire Suzaku tomb was a mess. Countless rifts had appeared on the ground and sky, and many places were on the verge of collapsing. Any small amount of spiritual energy fluctuations could cause a disaster. Anyone who was caught in a rift would die. At this moment, the Suzaku tomb became much more dangerous than before. The collapse of the cultivation planet crystal isn't happening in an instant but slowly over time. This was all controlled by Zhu QZ. This was a game brought about by his madness. After the ground stopped shaking, the mountain range that Wang Lin was just in was now flat. It was as if everything that had just happened before the trembling was a dream. The gentle breeze evaporated the cold sweat from Wang Lin's forehead as a sense of dread filled his heart. He looked at the ruin below him. There were rifts that would open and close. He pressed Li Muwen's soul piece against his forehead and put it into the heaven-defying bead. Then he took a deep breath and slowly flew off into the distance. As he flew, his eyes suddenly lit up and he looked toward a collapsed mountain range. The hunchbacked old man was on top of some gravel, but only half of his body was there. His weak origin soul was struggling to leave his body. In the calamity that just happened, he lost half of his body and also his tattoo origin soul. At the moment Wang Lin's gaze landed on him, the old man's eyes revealed panic. He quickly left his body and was about to escape. Wang Lin's eyes became cold. He let out a cold snort and quickly chased after the old man. The old man's origin soul was extremely weak, so it wasn't much of a chase, but then a rift suddenly appeared before him without a sound. The old man let out a miserable scream and tried to back up, but he was too late. His entire origin soul was swallowed by the oval rift, and when it disappeared, so did the old man's origin soul. Wang Lin quickly stopped. He silently pondered and then raised his head to look into the distance. After one round of collapse, this Suzaku tomb had become extremely unstable. If he was careless for just a moment, he could die, so he began to hesitate. A moment later, Wang Lin let out a sigh and flew off into the distance. Planet Suzaku, Sea of Devils. The Sea of Devils was one of the first places that was attacked by the Forsaken Immortal clan. After all, it was very close to the Forsaken Immortal clan's base. Also, the mist that acted as a natural barrier for tens of thousands of years disappeared, and due to attacks from multiple other countries, the Sea of Devils was a mess. At its current state, it had no way of resisting the Forsaken Immortal clan, so it ended up being conquered by them. There was currently a person standing outside the chaotic broken stars in the Sea of Devils. This person was covered in a deathly aura and his figure couldn't be seen clearly. There were images of skeletons appearing all around him, creating almost a forest of skeletons. He looked at the chaotic broken stars with a look of hesitation. The divine retribution wasn't from an ancient cultivator, it was only a junior refining an ancient treasure. This old man has traveled the entire planet in these past few hundred years and hasn't been able to find any ancient cultivators, so my stomach is getting a bit hungry. Only here can I smell the scent of ancient cultivators, but this place is simply too dangerous. Should I go or not? This person pondered a bit, then his eyes lit up before he started shaking his head and muttering to himself, forget it. I can't throw away my life for my appetite. My injuries have recovered somewhat, so it is time to leave planet Suzaku. If I were to be found by that Sichunan, there is no way I could win against him in my current state. His eyes became cold as he muttered, I wonder how my old friend Sword Saint Ling Qianhu is doing on planet Qianyun. I should go see him. Maybe I can ask him to help me deal with Sichunan and get the whereabouts of that mysterious bead. Just at this moment, his eyes lit up, then he looked into the distance and said, even back then you liked to hide your head while your tail was showing. Long time no see, Po-jun. A hoarse laugh came from the void. Shortly after, the sky darkened. A large amount of seawater appeared in the sky and moved closer like a 10,000-man cavalry charge. A man wearing a blue robe was standing on top of the waves and walked closer step by step. There was a golden flower pattern embroidered on this man's robe, it looked very intricate. Greed. Could it be that you thought about this place too? Although this man's look was ordinary, there was a hint of viciousness in his eyes. The person surrounded by deathly aura snorted and said, "You vex me just by looking at you. If you like this place, you can go inside. I'm leaving." With that, he disappeared and flew off into the horizon. The man on top of the seawater began to ponder and then jumped down. He landed outside the chaotic broken stars. The seawater under him turned into a crystal which he then swallowed. Strange, this greed never goes to any place without treasures. Everywhere he goes must have treasures. 10,000 years ago, when I came to planet Suzaku, he had already been here for a long time. Although he was recovering from his injuries, could it have really been for this place instead? The man pondered a bit before walking into the chaotic broken stars. In the sea of blood in the depths of the land of the ancient god, on the only remaining pillar sat a man with a head of messy, blood-red hair. He suddenly raised his head. His vicious eyes could be seen underneath his messy hair. His crimson-red eyes could shake the heart of any living being. He let out a cruel smile. Another one came, "The day that I, Tuo Sen, escape will come soon, very soon. Wang Lin, you must keep my knowledge inheritance safe so I can retrieve it. Without my inheritance of power, your inheritance of knowledge is useless. Also, your inheritance of knowledge is not complete. There is one knowledge crystal that is in my hands. I spent so many years and so much effort to finally find this well-hidden knowledge crystal. After fusing with it, I remembered a lot of things. I could feel a mysterious power growing within the core of this planet over the years. This power is similar to the growth of a baby ancient god. This power is what your cultivators call the cultivation planet crystal. I can use this object to break my seal, and then I can use a soul exchange technique to leave this place. I will have to thank Tu Sai. When he chose this place to divide his consciousness, some of the natives made him a god. This was all recorded in that last knowledge crystal. Tu Sai responded to them by giving them the ancient god's sacrificial grounds. Although countless years have passed and that native race is gone, the last stronghold of the Forsaken Immortal clan is the last remaining ancient god sacrificial grounds. If I go there, I can use some of my spells. A junior of the Forsaken Immortal clan was sleeping there, and in order to get the cultivation planet crystal, I sacrificed a lot to push him from the 11-leaf stage to the 12-leaf stage. This allowed him to break the Forsaken Immortal clan out of the seal and kill their way into the cultivation world. All of this has gone according to my plan, and the location of the cultivation planet crystal has finally opened. Wang Lin, my messenger, has finally met you again. Although you have changed a lot, how could I, Tuo Sen, forget you? Your divine sense has been engraved in my heart. No matter where you run, I can find you. Tuo Sen raised his head and began to laugh. His laughter filled the entire blood sea, causing massive waves to surge across the sea. His eyes glowed red. The red from his eyes seemed to be several times thicker than the sea blood. Wang Lin, the day that I, Tuo Sen, escape is near. Once I devour you, I'll be an ancient god, an 8-star ancient god. At that time, who in this system will be my match? As Tuo Sen laughed, a few squeaking sounds came from the blood sea. Two little monkeys appeared and moved next to Tuo Sen. These two little monkeys' eyes released a demonic red glow. At this very moment in the Suzaku tomb, the eyes of the old man with the creepy smile glowed red. The eyes of the monkey on his shoulder were even more red. When the little monkey let out a squeak, the old man paused for a moment and looked into the distance. His eyes glowed red once more. He came. The old man was about to move out when the monkey on his shoulder let out a growl. But the old man paused a bit before turning around. His goal was the center of the Suzaku tomb. As the old man flew away, the little monkey looked before him and its eyes glowed red. This old man was very fast. This person seemed to be able to detect when those rifts would appear, so he easily dodged them. Although he moved very quickly, there was no danger to him. Shortly after the old man left, a ray of light flew in from the distance and Wang Lin landed. He looked at where the old man was and began to ponder. This video will end here.